Thank you. Hi. Man, this is going to be a lot of fun. So, finance people, I really need your help. I'm an executive coach, and so I work with Tier 1 executives, CXOs in large companies, and I help them to perform at their very best. And so I've been thinking about executive performance for a very long time. There are 6 major pillars of executive performance that I'd like to go through with you today. And we're going to think through the financial impact of executive coaching, because whenever I go to a company for the first time and I introduce myself and what I do, and hey, I'm an executive coach, the CFO is the one that always says, well, that's just a cost. And I'm like, no, there's got to be a better way to think about this. If the majority of the CXOs in the FTSE 100 and the Fortune 500 all have executive coaches, there has to be some sort of reason. And no, it's not a luxury item, it's a performance insurance. And you say, okay, so what does an executive coach do? Well, I do like what an athletic coach does, but with executives. There's no such thing as an Olympic athlete that doesn't have an Olympic coach. And that is the same thing for the highest performers in executive leadership in every industry, in every company in the world. This is not my slides. This is not my slide deck, guys. Yes. Are we able to get my slide deck up here? Sorry. Like, I really want to show this to you. That is not my slide deck, sorry. That's me. Nope. No, that's my proposal deck. Okay? That's my proposal and profile. It's interesting, but ultimately uncompelling for you guys. So sorry. If we could get my... Nope. Can I get my slide deck up there, please? Or you know what? If I don't know the material well enough to do it without a slide deck, I don't know the material. You want to just keep going? Hopefully these guys can get caught up. Nope. Can you just get rid of this file completely? This is not the file. That's a proposal deck. Okay, here, let's try again. No. Okay. If you can get the slide deck up, that would be great. Just let me know. Interrupt me in the middle and then tell me it's up, okay? Right. So there's 6 pillars of executive performance that I've been thinking about for a very long time. And they're the subject of a book that I published a couple of years ago called Spartan CEO. And really what it is it's the product of my irritation with my own clients. So I've had really amazing high-performing CEOs and really kind of mediocre performing CEOs. And I started to think very deeply a number of years ago about what the differences and the drivers are that differentiate those two groups of people. Because it doesn't seem to matter the business card, the size of the oak desk in the corner office, the number of employees in the company, or even the turnover. Those things are not great indicators of whether or not your CEO or CXO is going to be high performing or not. So I started to think through, what are those huge indicators? Wouldn't you like to know? Right? And if as an Olympic athlete, you have an Olympic coach, the Olympic coach doesn't have to play the game as well as the athlete can, but they have to be able to coach at that level. And so I thought, what do I need to be able to do in order to coach at the level of my executive athletes? And so there are 6 major pillars of executive performance. They are fitness, confidence, discipline, connecting, rest, and competition. We'll go through all those. And then, if we have the slide deck up at the end, I'd like to introduce you to 4 different models for thinking through the ROI of executive coaching, because that has been the most difficult part for most of my clients. So, the first one's fitness. And I take a biopsychosocial approach to this. Bio meaning body, psycho meaning mind, and social meaning all of you. So biopsychosocial model means we want to take a holistic approach to executive performance. Fitness is the first pillar, and I don't just mean physical fitness, I mean mental, emotional, spiritual, organizational fitness. Those are all a part of it. But let's just take physical for the beginning. Do you think it matters on the bottom line of a company if their CEO is physically fit? Yes. Now you say, like, instinctively, you're like, oh, I want to say yes. But do you know? Do you know? Does it matter? Does the bottom line of a company change if the CEO is physically fit? So I actually did the work on this, because it was a good question. So I did the research. 10 years of data from the S&P 1500, okay? 2 blocks of data. One, I looked at all of the companies whose CEOs played the most golf. And then I took the same block of data and I looked at all of the companies whose CEOs ran marathons to see if there was any significant difference in the profitability of those companies. And guess what I found? Do you think there's a difference? Look, golf is a sport. Marathon running is a sport. Both of them take about 4 hours. Do you think companies led by marathon runners make more or less money than those led by companies who golf? More. We do this by calculating the Tobin's Q. You know what Tobin's Q is? You're finance professionals, you should know what Tobin's Q is. It's market value over assets. Okay, so we take that ratio, market value over assets, to see whether or not the market value of companies led by CEOs who play golf make more than, or is better than the market value of companies whose CEOs run marathons. And what we found out is there's a 57% difference. The average of those market values to asset ratios over that period of time, 10 years, was 1.7 in the market, which means if you have $1 billion in assets in your company, your market value was probably around $1.7 billion in the S&P during that decade of data. But if your CEO ran marathons on a regular basis, guess what your market value was? $2.1 billion. And if your CEO played golf, guess what your market value was? $1.53 billion, just under the average. So yeah, it actually makes a big difference whether the CEO is physically fit or not physically fit. It matters on the bottom line. So when you're thinking about, oh, this is it. Oh, you guys. Thank you. Look, I can do all of this without slides, I really can, but it's so much cooler when you get to see the fun pictures, right? Like that. These are my CEOs. This one runs marathons, that one plays golf. Interesting story behind that guy, actually. He played a lot of golf during the 2008 financial crisis, and he was actually on the golf course when his company went bankrupt. So this is the Tobin's Q calculation. Market value over asset value, the S&P 1500, average Tobin's Q is 1.7 to 1. And so, yes, executive fitness, physical fitness, it moderates stress, it helps them to think better, they make better decisions, they're more emotionally resilient, they can last longer in negotiations with their counterparts, which makes you more money. So there is definitely an impact on the bottom line of your organization if your CEOs are physically fit or not. And I know that some of you are like, I can never tell that to them. I can never say that out loud. Well, say it out loud or not, there's other things that we can concentrate on, right? Physical fitness is just one piece of the puzzle. Let's talk about confidence. How many of you would say that you're generally confident people? I'm a generally confident person. And you look at me and you say, oh, that guy's really confident. You think I'm confident? I'm confident on stage. Yes, I look like I've got my stuff together, right? You say, oh, he's very confident. Well, we did some science on this and we found out that actually confidence isn't a character trait. It's not a personality trait. It's not something you're born with. In fact, all confidence is contextual and all confidence comes from risk. It's not the same as self-esteem. So for example, I'm here on the stage looking pretty confident, right? But this is my context. If you change just one piece of this context, maybe I won't be so confident anymore. Like if you take away my microphone and you give me a guitar, what happens to my confidence? It's all going to go away because even though it's the same audience, same room, same lights, same cameras, you change one piece of the context and the confidence is gone. All confidence comes from context and all confidence comes from risk. If you don't take a risk, you won't build any confidence. I don't become a more confident driver anymore because I don't really take any more risks driving. But there was a time when I had to gain that confidence when I started driving and I was making mistakes and, I had to earn that confidence. If you're taking a risk, you'll gain confidence. If you're not taking a risk, you won't. And the science of confidence is really about how to make sure that our CEOs, our CXOs are taking great calculated risks. Because confidence is not a talent, it's a skill. Number 3, discipline. Discipline is a horrible word, right? Like, it's terrible. I prefer words like motivation, right? Motivation's great. It feels good. It feels like you want to get something done. When you get that initial feeling in your head, you're like, oh, let's get something done. You're like, I'm going to write that report. I'm going to balance that spreadsheet. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to get up early. You get that initial motivation. It feels good. You know what the name of that chemical is called? Anyone? Dopamine. Yeah, dopamine. It's produced here in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex of your brain next to the reward and achievement center. Do you know how long it lasts?
Millimeters?
39 seconds. How about 40 seconds? So you're going to get a hit of dopamine, which is like a heroin level addictive drug that you produce in your brain and consume in your brain every day, and you're going to get a little hit of that every time you think about getting something done. The problem is it only lasts about 40 seconds. So if you just sit there for 40 seconds, don't actually do anything, guess what happens? You get another hit of dopamine, just as addictive, just as pleasurable, but it's not here, it's here, in the anterior insula of your brain, next to the risk and avoidance center. What our brains have evolved for us to do is, we get a little hit of dopamine just for thinking about getting something done, and then if we just sit around and wait for about 30 to 40 seconds and we don't do it, we get another hit of dopamine for not doing it. Because your brain is an amazing tool. It's evolved over the last million years of survival and adaptation. Your ancestors didn't earn you the right to be born by not getting stuff done. They got stuff done. So any apex predator that has an initial motivation to do something is going to do it. Reward. And any apex predator that has that initial motivation to do something and then doesn't do it must be avoiding the risk associated with not doing it. There's a warring pride between you and getting it done. There's some sort of enemy. There's a major storm brewing, whatever. Your brain rewards you for avoiding the risk of doing whatever it is you think you can do, that you wanted to get done. And that's how you become heroin level addicted to procrastination and not doing things. But it's that horrible miry spot between motivation, which is really easy, and habit, which is really easy, that place in the middle, that's called discipline. That's really hard. And discipline is the ability to choose your behavior regardless of how you feel. Number 4, connecting. Connecting, and I don't say relationships, I don't say people management, I say really actually connecting, because connecting is what's really profitable. And I'll go through that quickly for you now, right? It's not just handshakes, it's actually connecting with people that's profitable. Do you know how profitable it is? Well, you get that other chemical produced in your brain, right? It's not dopamine for getting things done. It's oxytocin. Have you heard that word before? Right, it's a real chemical. It's really produced in your brain, and it's produced when you connect with someone. It is the only way that any human has ever registered belonging, protection, trust, love. All of those words are measured in the brain in oxytocin. So do you think oxytocin matters on the bottom line of your company? Do you think connecting matters? Do you think whether your CXOs can connect with their VPs and SVPs, do you think that matters? You better believe it. A BetterUp study in 2017 found that employees who feel connected at work are willing to work for 23% less money. Not just 23% less today, 23% less lifetime earnings if they feel belonging and connected in the place where they work. That's not an excuse for you to pay them less. I can hear the CFOs in the room going, yeah, 23%. Right? No, it's not an excuse to pay them less, because actually that same study found that, ironically, even though they're willing to work for less, we actually pay them more. They're higher performing. They're more productive. They work an extra hour of discretionary effort every week. They take 2 less leave days every year. Why? Because they're connected. They find their work meaningful. So even though they're willing to work for less, we end up paying them more. And do you know how much more that works out to be on our bottom line? It's around $9,000 a year per employee. There's more, by the way, because Gallup did a great study in 2019, found very similar kinds of things. The impact of connecting and belonging and meaning at work are not just these, but there's way more research on this. Sorry. There. 41% less absenteeism, 59% less turnover, skipping down to 17% higher performance on average, and 21% greater profitability. And no, this isn't a single case study. This is 50,000 business units all over the world, 1.4 million employee records in this study. This is statistically, scientifically significant. So do you think connecting matters on the bottom line? Well, you better believe it. And it's the manager. Okay? This starts from the top. 70% of the variance on all of those benefits come down to the amount of oxytocin flowing in the mind of an employee when they talk to their line manager. And that starts with the CEO and moves all the way down the organization. If your people are operating in fear, you're losing out on all of those benefits. If your executives are operating in command and control, you are losing out on all of those benefits. That is the impact of executive coaching through connection. 14.7% of your net profit variance, it comes down to that ability for your managers to connect with their employees. It's oxytocin-based. Number 5, rest. If you've got your fitness sorted, your mindset with your confidence and your discipline, that's all good. And if you're connecting with the people around you and you're doing a good job of that, probably you're going to be pretty tired, especially if you're working in a large organization of 100 to 200, maybe 10,000 employees. Yeah, it gets exhausting. So you need a good rest strategy. And rest strategy comes from this very basic principle, which everybody knows. We do not get stronger when we exercise. Think about it. When you're in the gym, when you're running, when you're exercising, you're lifting things, you're not getting stronger, you're getting weaker. You're burning calories, you're burning glycogen, you're depleting the energy in your body, and if you just keep doing that, you're going to fall over. Okay? You're not getting stronger when you work out, you're breaking your muscle down. When do we get stronger? That's right, when we sleep. We get stronger when we're resting. And those executives that are bragging about having 4 hours of sleep every night and working 16-hour days, that is not something to brag about. Scientifically speaking, that is not helping you or them. Workaholism is not profitable. I'm in the 5 a.m. club. I am. I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. because I like to get a good start on the day. But the only reason I can be in the 5 a.m. club is because I'm also in the 10 p.m. club. I sleep from 10 until 5 every day, almost like clockwork. 7 hours is good enough. And by the way, do you know how much sleep you need? Yeah, usually between 6 and 8. The average, actually, for males is 7. Females, 7 hours and 20 minutes. So as it turns out, beauty sleep is a thing. Yes, it's scientific. And pillar 6. Competition. Oh, I didn't realize you're not seeing the slides anymore. I'm sorry. Wow, this is not helpful. I will do a better job of explaining them then. All right, so pillar 6, competition. Whether we're talking about like Usain Bolt's record-breaking world record-breaking run, or we talk about Mitchie Briscoe's 1280 at the X Games, which is one of my favorite things to watch. We love a good rivalry because they show us not just what can be done, but what we can do. Rivalries are amazing, and rivalries are profitable. And I'm not talking about competing for the sake of winning. I'm talking about competing for the sake of self-development. This is the key that most of my executive coaching clients, they get. They benchmark themselves, like Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. You know who these people are? Some of you watch football? I don't watch football, but I study it. And I found really interesting, Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, they passed the Ballon d'Or back and forth between each other for more than a decade. That's pretty amazing, right? These two guys. You know, they only actually see each other on the field maybe once or twice a year. I remember reading a great article interviewing Cristiano Ronaldo, and it was asking him, like, hey, are you and Messi friends? And he said, well, no, like, there's no reason why we couldn't go out to dinner. I don't mind. I'm certainly a better footballer because he exists. Oh, it's so brilliant, right? But these rivalries, when you can get your CXOs pitted against each other as great rivals like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. Do you remember what happened in 1997? Anybody remember? Time magazine's cover, August 1997, was Steve Jobs picking up the phone saying, thank you, Bill, the world is a better place. After Bill Gates bought a third of Apple's preferred stock to save them from insolvency. Why? Why would Microsoft, with their feet on the neck of their greatest competitor, give him breathing room, water, take him to the emergency, and then set him up again to fight? Why? Well, Bill Gates was asked about that in an interview, and he said, same thing as Ronaldo did. You know what? If Apple goes down, Microsoft will never know what it's capable of. And that's the new science of competition. We don't compete to defeat, we compete to develop. Those are the 6 pillars of executive performance: fitness, confidence, discipline, connecting, rest, and competition. Now, there's really great science behind all of these things, but what you really need as finance professionals is something that I have never presented before. Are you ready? I have 4 models that I've been using to think through the ROI on executive coaching. I'm happy to share these models with any of you who is willing to have a conversation with me about executive coaching in your organization. Just connect with me. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm not very difficult to find, or come find me during the break or grab a card of mine. Connect with me. I will give you the models and we'll work on it together, okay? But there's 4 different ways that we use to think through ROI on executive coaching. The first 2 are assumptive, and the last 2 are more strategic and more probability weighted. So really quickly, executive coaching ROI models. Model 1, shorthand. The shorthand model is a basic, it's a no-brainer. It's one of those things where if you go through the calculator right, the executive is going to look at it and go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's going to be positive. Right? For every $20 million in decision volume, these are actual case studies, by the way. Some of these are my clients. There's a 15% chance that over a year's time, executive coaching will help me to either avoid a $1 million mistake or notice a similar value opportunity that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. Overall, I'm responsible for a total of $200 million in decision-making volume every year, and the executive coaching fees are $60,000. Therefore, the risk-weighted ROI is 25x. Again, not very scientific, but it's a really great assumptive model. And if it's 25x, you might want to know that you're burning about $4,000 a day in delay costs by not having already done this. But let's maybe go to something a little bit more scientific, like asset management. In preventative maintenance and high-class asset management, across all different disciplines, we've got like from refrigerators to oil and gas refineries, an expenditure between 4.5% and 7.5% on preventative maintenance tends to result in 545% ROI over a few years, okay? That's just preventative maintenance. And you think, okay, so humans are a little bit different than assets. That's true, but that's because humans are less reliable, less predictable. So for all of the reasons that separates humans from other asset classes, this is probably going to be even better than what you think. Now, most calculations on ROI of executive coaching come in at around between 600 and 900%, but I don't want to make that assumption. So let's use this and work backwards. If we were to spend 4.5% to 7.5% insurance on our executives in terms of their preventative maintenance, what would that look like? And what would be the impact of that? And I'm not going to read all of this, obviously, but this is a great, simple case study. Again, I'm very happy to share this with you. Base salary, bonuses, signing bonus, retention bonus. These are the direct costs, the CXO total costs of employment. Right? So we're looking at cost of ownership, direct and indirect indicators on cost of ownership for your executive as an asset class. You're used to thinking about humans in terms of capital, so this should be easy. When we add up the total direct and indirect costs, the CXO total cost of employment for this particular case study is around $2.8 million. Between 4.5% and 7.5% is an expenditure, reasonable expenditure with a 500% ROI. We're looking at a budget of between $129,000 and $215,000 for preventative maintenance for your executive. Not difficult to understand, right? And you think, oh, well, that sounds like a lot, right? But $2.5 million, that's not a lot for CEO compensation, especially in today's world, especially noting that, well, like I said, humans are not quite the same as an industrial asset. They're a lot less reliable, they're less predictable, they're less consistent. So some preventative maintenance is probably a really good idea. And if you recognize that the S&P 500, their average CEO salary is around $16.7 million US dollars a year, that means their preventative maintenance budget between 4.5% and 7.5% is around $1 million. Do you guys know who that is? What's his name? Tony Robbins, right. Good. So he's an executive coach. Guess how much he charges? About $1 million a year. All of his clients are on the S&P 500. This is something that is a best practice in most of the world, which in this area of the world is maybe a little bit slower to catch on. But that's model number 2. Model number 3 is KPI mapping. This is where it becomes a little bit more scientific. We're going to use less assumptions on this. We're going to do a little bit more probability weighting. So this is the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, and I haven't listed down all of their goals. I just listed down a few of them, right? 5 goals. These 5 goals can be mapped back to their KPIs, their in-role KPIs for the organization. Most of the executives that I coach, they don't want to talk about their goals from coaching with anyone else in the organization, so we anonymize them. All we say is goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we map it back to their KPIs like this. In this case, this particular CMO is saying that, let's say, goal number 1, which is running a marathon or half marathon, is connected to KPIs 1, 3, and 4. Meaningfully, they're going to perform better in these areas as a result of doing that. And that is a reasonable assumption. Yes, scientifically, reasonably, they're going to perform better in these KPIs as a result of that direct coaching. But they don't want to say exactly what it is they're doing. They just want to map it back. So then when we look at it at the end of the year, we look at their year-on-year performance and those KPIs in those particular areas, we can see what the financial impact of those KPIs was on the organization. We let the CXO weight how much of the influence on that impact was down to the executive coaching that they received. We can find the total value from that. And from there, it's very easy to calculate the ROI, which in this case was around 62x. That's KPI mapping. Number 4. I don't know if any of you have ever met Jack Phillips. Jack Phillips is the founder and president of the ROI Institute. He does ROI for everything. He's a good friend of mine. I met him a few times, and he says, this is the way we should be calculating ROI in executive coaching. These are the 7 indicators that you need to measure. And we look at total operational efficiency, growth, cost reduction. We take a total impact on the entire organization. And this is specific to CEOs in this model. But I'm not going to walk through each step. I'll just show you what the inputs are. And these are the last few indicators so that we get to an assumptive, indicative model that says, okay, this is the total financial impact on the organization, of which we're going to attribute 25% to the impact of executive coaching on the CEO and the CXOs. Then you have a value. Then you have an X. Those are the 4 models that I use for projecting finance and projecting cost and projecting the impact and the ROI of executive coaching. So again, I've never shared that with anyone before. I've never shown that, especially in a room like this. Is that helpful for you? I think maybe a good starting point is just to recognize that it doesn't matter which way you cut it, it's profitable. If you're not maintaining your large assets, they're going to break down. If you're not doing the same for your CXOs, guess what's going to happen? They're going to break down. And some of you see this in your places of work. The CXOs are stressed. They are running. Am I right? The world is more complex than it's ever been. The pressures and stresses are more and higher than there have ever been. The ability to make work-life balance is more difficult now than it's ever been. And you think that your CXOs are going to perform like athletes if they're not with Olympic coaches? Probably not. That is why my industry exists. If this is interesting to you and you want to have a conversation about it, I'd love to talk with you afterwards. But I do have a little bit of time now for Q&A. I didn't want to take up all of my time with presentation, but those are the 6 pillars of executive performing and the 4 ROIs for executive coaching. I am Dr. Corrie Block, and I thank you so much for being with me this morning. So I do have some time. Yeah? Sorry? Yeah, does anybody have any questions? I'd love to. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, buddy.
Yeah, yo. What's your name? Danish. Hi, lovely to meet you.
Morning, everyone. Thank you.
Hi.
All right. So thank you very much. Really first.
My pleasure.
So, my question is, what would you think, what would you say is the first step to change the mentality from where we are to the getting into having this scholarship now?
Yeah. So,
What's that?
really good question, because most CXOs think of coaching as therapy. Okay, that's not my job. If you're broken and you need to be fixed, go get a therapist. Okay? My job is to take talented athletes and turn them into Olympic athletes. That's my job. So first of all, you have to frame this as it's not something that you're getting because you're broken and you need to be fixed. It's something that you're getting because you've earned that in your play. You're playing at this level. You've got 1,000 families in your care. Each and every one of them is counting on you to make really good quality decisions consistently. Okay? That level of play comes with this level of coaching. It's a benefit. This is not something that you do to fix broken CXOs. It's a benefit that you offer to high-performing CXOs because they've earned it. Yeah, like any kid on the football field. You got kids? Dennis, you got kids? I got 5 kids, right? Your kids running around in the park playing football. You notice they're running a little bit faster than everybody else, kicking a little more accurately than anyone else, right? You notice that level of talent. What's the first thing you do as a parent? You find the coach. You recognize talent with coaching. There's no Olympic athlete without an Olympic coach. That's how they get there. That's how they stay there. It's the same with the CXOs and the FTSE 100 and the Fortune 500. That's how they got there. That's how they stay there. It's a benefit because you're at that level of play. And if you think in every major industry in the world, every top-level violin player has a coach. Every top-level brain surgeon has a coach. Like, this is not an athletic industry. It is across every industry. Every highest level player in humanity, in any game, economic or otherwise, has a coach. So do you think your CXOs are going to perform at their very best without one? We're not built that way. All humans, through all of history, have performed at their very best with somebody next to them. We're social animals, so frame it as a benefit. Next. Yeah. Yes, I see you. There's a couple of hands back there. Right there.
Hi. So you talk about KPIs.
Yes.
And how do you show that number of any correct KPIs by? So I'm gonna go James 10, and it does say this more fact. If you try is a bit louder, but if you try can only hit 10, your best sense neural manage your ROI.
That's true.
How do you show that why KPIs are being tracked? Because the digital one is non-traumatic KPIs, unrestricted. They are 3 and all very easy, right?
Yeah, that's true. And look, for me as an executive coach, I've been writing KPIs for my executives for years. Some of them are known to their companies. Some of them are KPIs that in-role KPIs that they've written for themselves that aren't even declared. Okay, an in-role KPI is just a goal. KPI is just a fancy way of saying a personal goal for your role. That's it. So I help them to write those KPIs that are in a role, but I always want to make sure that the KPI is tied to some sort of financial performance or financial impact. There's science behind this. Like I said, there's science behind preventative maintenance and the amount that you invest and the general ROI on that investment. We have that. We know that, for example, if your CEO is working on a sleep strategy and one of their goals is to sleep 7 hours every night, we know there's a financial impact. If your CEO let's say, sleeps less than 6 hours a night on Friday night, right? He goes out partying, whatever's a birthday party, sleeps less than 6 hours. Saturday, he sleeps again less than 6 hours. Sunday, he catches up, right? He's got his 7 hours and 30 minutes. He wakes up on Monday having caught up on sleep. That isn't going to help. His productivity will go down by 12.1% for the following 6 days, and it will be sustained even if he sleeps more than 7 hours for those 6 days. Your sleep actually has an onward impact for about a week on your performance. But there's science behind that now. So we can expect a performance increase if your CEO goes from sleeping 5 hours a night to 7 hours a night. That's predictable. We have science behind that. But yeah, I think writing KPIs is something that coaches should be looking at. I know that there's a lot of movement toward non-advisory coaching these days, and I don't think that's going to be helpful for your CXOs at all. Your CXOs need someone that's going to be able to play at their level, or at least coach at their level. I don't see any Olympic coaches in the world asking their athletes, well, what do you think you should do, and what haven't you tried? No, that's just really weak coaching. If the coach can't coach at the athlete's level, he has no business being there. Okay, so we as coaches should be able to go through and help the CXO to write KPIs for themselves, those that are declared to the organization and some that are not. Does that help? Good. I saw somebody else. Yes, go ahead.
Hi. Initially, I would like to ask questions about the performance of shareholder values and the principal and the employee problems. Handle and achieve targets of KPIs. So basically, we it's how we can to work for the CEO who not for employees rather than the CEO. So it will be the spoke and the agile problem among spoke transport. Mostly with of achieving home. The manager most likely to be their own interest to check the books rather than the overall CEO or the CEO. Further, you need to in terms of making the managers more appropriate to the organizational value and then the interests of the individual.
Okay, so I don't see that there's a huge gap between selfish interest and collective interests. Okay? Selfishness is not a bad thing. Everybody's selfish, okay? But we learned about 250,000 to 500,000 years ago in our evolution that the best form of selfishness is together, on teams, right? There were families, tribes, cities, nations, empires. Now, since the Industrial Revolution, we have businesses. And businesses are just a new form of a very old truth. We work on teams to add value in exchange for a share of the resources. The best form of selfishness actually is together. And it's actually most clearly understood in organizations where the leaders really are trying to serve their employees. And I know that you think that there's a gap between serving employees and serving the shareholders, but there's not. The statistics that are come out of Kaplan and Norton after the balanced scorecard in 1991 were really, really clear, and it's held up for the last 30 years. If you invest in process improvement, learning and development, and customer satisfaction, those are predictable indicators of future financial performance. Financial performance itself is always rear-facing. As soon as you look at it, it's outdated. Okay, but if you measure those things, one of which is learning and development, if your people are being developed, yeah, it's a reliable statistical indicator of future financial performance. So I don't see serving the employee as something that doesn't serve the shareholder. I don't think maximizing shareholder value is a goal. I think it's a byproduct. Does that make sense? Yeah, go ahead.
When you work as a technician, my name is Corrie. I have a question that
Sure.
but slowly go out free.
First one, you mentioned that so we get a program started.
Yeah.
So in PLE, backups, first one will be what are the factors or the qualities that you would look for report except the coaching program from about something. But the second one, you mentioned top talent.
Yeah.
Are these executive coaching programs designed only for C-suite?
Or do you recommend that it is although and take it down for different areas of the organization?
In the last one, be stay working their time in nice talk of a family where we should on a daily set is every coaching programs. I've seen some families looking at it in time succession plan or what's the generalized approach?
Yeah. Okay. So really great questions. As early as possible in terms of when you should do it. I have a couple of my coaching clients are entrepreneurs. Their VCs pay my fees so that I can ensure the performance of the solopreneur or the entrepreneur. Okay, so as early as possible. And in those companies, they'd be like maybe 25, 30 employees. They're very small. So I don't think starting at a certain P&L number is useful. I think you should start as soon as you can. As soon as you've recognized that you have an Olympic level executive, you should get them an Olympic level executive coach. If you've got that level of talent, you should have that level of performance. And they're not going to get to that level of performance without coaching, okay? So that's really important. Sorry, your second question was, remind me again? Good coaching program. So there's actually, this is really great. I didn't think about going into this when I started, but there's actually a massive gap I have found between what's required of a good executive coach for the CXOs and what's required from a good executive coach for C-1, C-2, right? So at C-1, C-2, you've got a deputy CFO, for example, okay? And the deputy CFO still has the CFO to go to check and balance, do sanity checks, question these things. The CFO, they're the highest level of finance in the organization. They don't have anyone to go to if they're questioning themselves and they need to talk it out. That's a sign of weakness. You can't do that, right? So because of the political plays that are happening in the CXO level, which is fine. We don't mind the politics. The politics is a great balance for autocracy, right? So office politics is amazing. But what it means is that your CXOs are very lonely at the top in terms of their competence, and they don't have anyone to bounce things off of. Your CEO is not going to be able to go to the board of directors and say, hey, I don't really understand the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence as well as I should. They're not going to display that lack of confidence or lack of competence, except with a coach. With a coach, you're going to get that. So there's a massive gap between what's required at CXO level and C-1. I would say that as you go down, non-advisory coaching is probably going to be more effective. But as you go up, advisory coaching and acumen and experience and education is going to be more effective. If I was to walk into any of my CDO clients' offices and sit down for an hour and say, well, what do you think you should do next and what haven't you tried? They would kick me out like that. That's not a valuable hour. And that's why a good deal of your CXOs who've tried executive coaching say, well, it's not for me. Because they didn't have an Olympic level coach. It's like putting an amateur football coach in front of an Olympic football team. You can't, there's a mismatch. The team's going to go, yeah, we don't need this coaching thing. But at the highest level of play in every game, football included, you're never going to find Cristiano Ronaldo waking up thinking, oh, I know enough about football, I don't need coaching. That's stupid. But in business, we do it all the time. Well, those outside of the highest performing companies do it all the time. Okay, so make sure that your executive coaching program is led by advisory coaches at the CXO level, and then as you move down, more non-advisory coaches. Make sense? Good, and feel free to write to me if you have any questions. I will help you to develop a great program. I don't work just by myself as well. I've got a great network of people. One more question, or are we done?
One last question.
Okay. Awesome. Who we got?
Hello.
Hi. Oh, hi. Hi, how are you? I'm Corrie.
Sorry, she about 6 years.
We wish about connecting.
Yes.
She's very important for the people, but something that, like, it's not there, just the research, the report, see, this is my campaign, like the picture, and like it for a killer. Of course, so the people, like, can it allow me, has.
Yeah, so connecting is, for me, a little bit more descriptive than relationship building and networking. Networking is, I can go around the room, I can meet 50 of you today, shake hands, say hi, smile, and never think of you again. That's networking, okay? That's not connecting. Connecting is when we make eye contact. It lasts for between 2 and 5 seconds. A little bit of oxytocin is produced in your brain and in mine when we recognize each other as safe. Okay, connecting is when your manager looks at their employees, makes eye contact with them. The employee produces oxytocin when they look at their line manager and says, this person is safe. This person's got my back. This person will protect me in case I make a mistake. This person is going to teach me what I need to know about my job. This person is going to make sure that I'm included when I need to be included. When your employees feel marginalized, excluded in their jobs, they're not psychologically safe. They're disconnected, even though they may be in relationship. So they'll stand and smile and say hi and shake hands and hi, it's nice to see you. And then as soon as they turn their back, be like, that's the most horrible boss I've ever had. You know this to be true. A relationship is not the same as connecting. Connecting really involves making sure that the person that's in front of you feels psychologically safe when they're in front of you. That's connecting. That's the difference for me. And I think that's much more important. And I know scientifically that it's much more profitable than just networking.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.